Well, frankly, I feel that, without a coordinated offensive, right? Like the one that you're advocating for, where it's a broad policy set that includes rights for all Americans, economic rights. And I think the theme of the show today is democratic leadership failures. And it's just these tweaks to the system. You're ceding the framing to the right wing in the way that you describe, Harvey. So, I mean, we also, in talking about the response to the shooting, we were saying how there needs to be a massive shift in leadership. There's a absence of imagination that I think is inherent to this, and they wouldn't even entertain these concepts, frankly.
Yeah.
Well, Alex might well mention that the candidates, at least that his organization, Progressive Democrats, have embraced and endorsed, have themselves been asked whether they could take this on as part of their mission. And before we get into that, I'll just say that my greatest hope was that Nina Turner was going to win in Cleveland, because she was so enthusiastic about this. And I thought she would be, excuse the metaphor, the vehicle to take this into the Progressive Caucus, or at least into the squad. The word rejuvenate is improper because they're all much younger than I am, but to revive the energies that we saw at the outset of their formation. Right, Alan?
Yeah,
I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really sort of crazy that the progressive movement writ large doesn't lead more with economics. I mean, simply put, and for decades, and currently at this moment with inflationary concerns, economics is polling as the top concern for the American public. Okay, right there, you have to speak to the electorate. Okay, the left progressive movement has allowed itself to be defined by basically jerks like Bill Maher as being all about, messaging that suffocates public discourse, okay, or whatever issue of the day they want to highlight as what the left progressives are about. You actually look at the work of the actual progressives in Congress, in this Congress last year, and what they were focused on, just absolutely laser focused on, was making all of the statutes in Build Back Better more economically progressive. The center right would say, no, this goes too far. They would take it another direction. They'd even propose something better. So the actual work they were doing was on core economics. And really, if we had a unified left progressive movement, which we need to have, because we're looking at the absence of a leading progressive presidential candidate for 2024. And we really need to have coordination where economic messaging is at the really front and center of what we stand for, because these are incredibly popular positions when you fill in the public policy positions for all 10 of those points. I mean, you look at the polling among Democrats, registered Democrats, and it's an astronomical blowout that we should be winning all of these elections. Now we know incumbency, the power of incumbency, the power of money, and all that that can do to pollute the airwaves in these small congressional districts can really skew the results. And that's what we're seeing across the country. We had a victory against massive amounts of money in Pennsylvania last week, and also one now that's official out in Oregon. But my word, these are difficult. Buying congressional races is an easy thing to do in the era of Citizens United. So how do we face that? We face that with basically run a national unified messaging campaign as best as possible. I mean, it's going to have some fluctuations here and there, but if you lead with economics on that, and by the way, this in no way abandons any of the other issues. By all measures, the progressive movement is going to be the greatest ally for the transgendered movement, for all of the issues that otherwise are being spoken about. But this needs to come up as really the top central focus of the issue of the progressive left. One, because it's a winning hand. No, two, because it was a winning hand. And one, because it's already the work that we stand for. It's the most difficult lift, because let's face it, American big money, American capital, in all of its power and force, is going to be arrayed against this message in ways that they're not going to be against other messages. So.
What is the mechanism for that? I mean, because we do have look, Nina Turner was outspent, or at least in terms of this outside money, it came in hard, and we watch Cisneros have to, she sort of tempered her message a little bit, I think, for a changing district. But again, there were, incumbency forces and the Democratic leadership and, NRA and that weigh in on this. They're not going away, right? I mean, those things exist. What is the mechanism And I accept the premise that there needs to be a sort of like a 20,000, 30,000 foot type of narrative that stretches, that provides its own sort of umbrella for, and this is that message. But what's the apparatus that gets everyone on the same page, that carries that message, so that when Anina Turner or, Summer Lee was able to pull it off in Pennsylvania. But if you want to increase the sort of percentage of success, I guess, what is the apparatus that provides at least the context for those races to happen and gives them a slight leg up on day one?
Right. Well, obviously, it takes a lot of internal coordination among the progressive left, which is a very difficult thing to achieve for a whole bunch of reasons that I think all of us talking are relatively familiar with. But from the point of view of Progressive Democrats of America, which is one of the organizations that's at the table with organizations like Our Revolution, Justice Democrats, all the way out on the left wing to DSA, I mean, we'll be advocating for this over the next period. You know, the midterm elections are, of course, a different dynamic than the presidential races. But again, are we going to have a really powerful progressive champion in the 2024 primaries? If we do, then we certainly piggyback off of a candidate like Bernie Sanders, who would be leading with this. If Elizabeth Warren runs, and of course, PDA, if people don't know, we were the original Bernie Sanders PAC. We are very proud to be the organization that brought the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign to the world. We drafted him as the only organization to run the Run, Bernie, Run drafting effort, and going all the way back to 2013. But if you look at a candidate like Elizabeth Warren, for all the foibles and difficulties she had with her race, she clearly does lead on economic matters. And I think, you look at the presidential candidates and you can see that if they're going to compete, they understand how prominent this has to be. But it gets dissipated by the time you get to the midterms. In all due respect, we probably have about 4 years to figure that one out, but I think we should start working on it right away. And certainly PDA will be advocating for this. Clearly, it's going to be a central focus of our advocacy going forward. And I do think the results would be better. If we're going to come out of this with 7 to 10 members of the squad, I bet you we can add to that considerably, or would have added to that in this cycle. Of course, we don't know where the world will be in 4 years.
What's the number? Is there a number? I mean, does anybody have a number? Like, I mean, look, we watched the Freedom Caucus, and we never knew how many people were in the Freedom Caucus. That was one of their sort of like their features. We're not going to, it's like Fight Club type of thing. And I'm not exactly sure what the value of that was, other than they could probably project, they didn't have defections because nobody knew whether or not the people were in there anyways. I mean, you can see the value of it on some level, and it's certainly consistent with the brand in terms of lack of transparency. But what is there? Does someone have a number? Like, I mean, is someone they're saying that
we're 50 to 75, actually. So focus on the squad is a little disingenuous. You look at people like Jim McGovern out in Massachusetts, he's rock solid with us. Right?
Worcester,
there are bunches of them. Right. But it's less than the Progressive Caucus.
Okay.
There definitely are weak progressive
What's the number we need? Like, where is the...
215.
Okay. Well, I understand. But
I do not. I mean, look, I mean, the things we're proposing, you know how absurd the historical moment is? And of course, this is an incredibly complex question. But if you look at America's top allies around the world throughout the whole Cold War period, we know which countries they were: Western Europe, South Korea, Japan. I mean, some of them because of conquest and all that. But basically, they all have this economic contract, social contract, and we don't. And even more of a craziness about it is, of course, the Roosevelt and Truman administration actually went in and drafted a lot of these constitutions that guaranteed the existence of social democracy. Now, neoliberalism has chipped away at it, but look, not really. They all have free universal health care. They largely have all free public education through higher education. That even just got expanded in Germany under Angela Merkel. So we're the one country that doesn't have it. This is not a utopian scheme that's impossible to imagine how it would be operating.